The Kansas Nebraska Act of 1854 opened a vast new area of the American heartland to settlement, but it also opened the region to the possible spread of slavery and ignited a firestorm that launched the country on the path to civil war. The territory was acquired from the French 50 years earlier in the Louisiana Purchase. It had been set aside for Indians and closed to white settlement. But business interests wanted it, mainly to build a transcontinental railroad through it. The Indian rights were rescinded, and Senator Stephen Douglas introduced a bill to organize the region into two territories, Kansas and Nebraska, a necessary step for future development.
Stephen A. Douglas, the senator from Illinois, who was really the most prominent political figure of the 1850s, even though he never was elected president, developed this idea he called popular sovereignty, which was basically that the people of the territories should decide for themselves whether or not they wanted to have slavery.
Douglas believed he needed at least the possibility of allowing slavery in the new territories to get the support of Southern Democrats for his bill. But Douglas had played with fire. The act overturned the Missouri Compromise, which 3 decades earlier had banned slavery anywhere north of latitude 3630.
So in effect, what the Kansas Nebraska Act did was destabilize the understandings that were part of the territorial question.
And the result was Bleeding Kansas.
Bleeding Kansas was the name given the outbreak of violence in that territory sparked by this new legislation.
There was a civil war in Kansas between the pro-slavery and the anti-slavery forces. It was never clear who was going to decide. Did the first 10 people into a territory decide?
Anti-slavery settlers raced to Kansas to try to be the people who would decide the issue. Thousands of pro-slavery settlers crossed from the slave state of Missouri to counter them, often violently, and cast ballots in favor of making Kansas a slave state as well. By 1858, clashes between the two sides had claimed 200 lives. This violence eventually spilled over into the Civil War, which would go on to claim 200,000 lives by 1865.